This is Voluminous, a listening books podcast for every kind of reader, but especially for fans of audiobooks. I'm Jessica Stone, and for this last episode of Series 2, as we celebrate Listening Books' 60th birthday, I've got a few treats in store. We'll be hearing throughout from some of Listening Books' ambassadors, including children's book authors Sally Gardner and Bali Rai, comedian and author Jenny Eclair, and author Kit Duvall, who wrote one of my favourite recent reads, My Name is Leon, among others. I also sat down with Nik de Garis on his last day at Listening Books as our audio producer, and we had a nice chat about some of his greatest hits and most embarrassing gaffes during his time here. But first, I'll be chatting with Gillie Howarth, who chairs our Board of Trustees and who's been here long enough to share stories I'm looking forward to hearing. More importantly, Gillie is a devoted reader who I'm certain is going to have some excellent recommendations for our reading lists. Welcome to the podcast, Gillie.
Really nice to be here.
I'm so glad you're willing to be on the show. I'm not sure how much listeners of the podcast actually know about Listening Books beyond the little summary I give at the end of each episode. But I understand that you knew the founder, Norma Skemp. Could you start off by telling us a bit about her story and how this all started?
Well, it was originally the Listening Library, and she had originally run a big secretarial agency herself, having studied at the Guildhall. She studied drama there, and then she'd set up this agency after the war. She'd been a Wren, and it was hugely successful, I think partly because she was so charming, and she did a lot of work for the Houses of Parliament, so she provided both House of Lords and the House of Commons with secretaries, and everybody spoke, that was sort of very exceptional, her agency. And then she had a horrible car accident where she lost the sight of one eye, and the other eye was already very compromised, so she was really stuck, somebody who loved books so much. So that's what prompted her to start the library, the Listening Library. And because of all her contacts and her own personal charm, I think, she had contacts in the Houses of Parliament and with lots of actors and actresses because of her early training. So she got people like Sybil Thorndike to, be supporters and to do readings for her. And so that's how it started. But I went meeting her. She was very small and bird-like, but very dynamic, you could tell. And she was just delightful. So I could really understand why she got it off the ground with such a lot of success, because she was very personally charming.
When was it that you met her?
It's going back a long way, and I'm terribly bad at dates. But I'm sure it's going back, I should probably think, over 20 years now, maybe. Yeah, so it's quite a long time ago. Yeah.
And so then when and how did you become part of the Listening Books story?
Well, that must have been before I met Norma. So I was teaching at Westminster Under School, which is a prep school. I was teaching English, of course. But I also did lots of, because it was a very privileged school in a way, I did lots of charity work, and I felt that boys ought to understand that how privileged they were and what they could do to make the world a better place. So we raised lots of money during the year for charity, and I was responsible for that. So I used to take quite a lot of trouble to research the charities that we supported and to try and kind of widen the boys' horizons by learning about the charities that they were supporting. They had an element of choice, but I also tried to point them in directions so they didn't always choose, animal charities or charities that were obviously simple choices. And anyway, inevitably, one of the things I came across was Listening Books. Well, not called Listening Books then, it was the Listening Library then.
Yeah. I think we still have that name on our doors, don't we?
I think so, yes. Yeah. And that seemed a really good choice because the boys were avid readers. I never had any bother luring them to read. They were very keen readers.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, it was very good. They had access to lots of books, and their parents were on the whole very literate. But it was really nice that we had a Christmas readathon, and we used to raise kind of almost 20,000 a year. It started off just the first year, £1,100, and then it grew to 20,000. So that was very exciting because they put their heart and soul into reading, and to also, I tried to get them to have the idea of approaching people and really saying what they were why they were reading and getting support from relative strangers or people that they lived nearby, or not just their grannies. And some of them did so well that. Anyway, so that was how I came across listening books, because they wanted to share. The boys understood that it was nice to share their love of reading with people who couldn't read print so easily, either because they had physical disabilities like ME or muscular dystrophy or something, but also people who were dyslexic. And so that was how I came across. And then they invited me on. They were very pleased with the money I'd raised. So they invited me onto the board. But it was nice because actually at that stage there weren't very many child members. There were very few child members. I said, there are lots and lots of children who could benefit from this. And so then we started, making many more books for children, and that's grown a lot. Because of course there are so many children, not necessarily with physical disabilities, but with dyslexia, who are very often shut out from the pleasure of books.
Yes, And so our sound learning titles, we have that down to your initiative then, do we?
A bit. I like to take credit for that.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Well, there aren't many teachers are always busy, and because there aren't many teachers on boards of things. But it was nice because I had the experience as a working teacher to actually inform that.
Was that a gap that you had noticed in teaching?
I was teaching on her. It was a very selective school that I've taught at, so academically selective. So, but even for them, audiobooks were, definitely help. And I could see that for other children who maybe weren't so academically able, that having audiobooks would really open up the world for them a lot.
I think audiobooks have been a game changer for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And for lots of different reasons.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Sally Gardner. I am a writer for children and for adults, and I'm incredibly honoured to be asked to be an ambassador for listening books. When I was small, I used to fantasise about having an actor in a cupboard that could come out and read me books, because I couldn't read to myself. And at 14, I still couldn't read. And then I discovered audio. And in a way, my world went from being rather small to being enormous, because I could have books that I fantasized about reading. And in fact, I've done most of my learning through my ear. And today I do most of my reading through my ear. And I am passionate about the gift that audio has given me, the ability to be the writer I am, because I have been able to access classics and listen to things. And without audio, I'd have been a very lost human being.
I think one of our ambassadors, I think it's Kit Duvall, said that audiobooks are the only way that you can read with your eyes closed.
Oh, lovely. There's a lovely book I love, which is called Bird Watching with Your Eyes Closed by Simon Barnes. Do you know? Well, it's all about bird song. But so that idea, it's nice having your eyes closed and relaxing. And then, lots of people listen to audiobooks going to sleep, don't they? And then they can go back. And now it's so easy to go back because of the technology to find your place.
Yes.
Or you can have it that it turns off in 20 minutes or something.
Yes. I have to say that would be a deterrent for me for bedtime reading, because I would be worried that I would drop off and
lose your place.
Yes. Yeah. And yet that there would be somehow this vague familiarity then when listening to the bit, when re-listening to the bit that I'd fallen asleep, I'd be like, this seems familiar. I feel like I've already listened to this. Have I already listened to this?
Oh, but it's a bit horrifying. You find you're rereading it and then you're thinking, oh dear, yes, I have read this before, but I'd forgotten it. It's very bad.
Hi, I'm Bali Rai. I'm an author of children's, teenage and young adult novels. I was absolutely honoured to be asked to become an ambassador for listening books. I think it's vital that all people in the UK, regardless of ability, have access to great literature, and that's why this fantastic project means so much, and that's why I'm very proud to be supporting the project. I've got to admit, as a younger person, I wasn't always a big fan of audiobooks. I just really didn't listen to them. But as I've got older, and certainly as I spent more time in the car, and I'm sort of time poor as a single parent and with the work that I do, audiobooks for me have been a boon, to be able to listen to them in the car, but also to be soothed to sleep at night by some fantastic voices has been an absolute revelation. I'm a huge fan of them now. And I think it's really important that everybody have the opportunity to access literature as much as possible.
Somebody was on the tube with me. Actually, it was a nun just now, and I thought, so rare to see a nun these days. And she got in and she got out her Kindle. But I thought, oh, God, it looks so grey and all the print is the same and it has no identity, And also, if you're curious like me, I always love it on the tube when I see what other people are reading. And I love it when you get
some
out
people would find that a plus for the ebooks then, that nosy people like you couldn't see what they're...
Oh, no, but people come across to me in the tube and they say, oh, you're reading that too. I mean, I was reading, somebody was reading The Hidden Life of Trees the other day and I kind of said, oh, I really like that.
Yes, I was reading that too.
Isn't it interesting?
Yes, so interesting.
So interesting. It changed my whole perspective. I love trees, but that was... the idea of them whispering to each other and passing these messages and helping each other, and the way the grown-up trees protect the saplings for a long time, don't let them grow too fast, they shade them, and then they what do? They kind of sacrifice themselves in some ways, let in the light, but only when the saplings are big enough to really have put out strong roots. Yeah. I thought the whole thing was so interesting. Anyway,
was. I've never looked at trees the same since. Yeah.
But it's nice, that connection that you can make with complete strangers over a book. Yeah.
No, I quite agree.
Yeah.
In fact, I think not long ago I was just going into the local station in my village to buy a weekly ticket, and I found the person perfectly professional but a bit standoffish and a bit aloof. And I thought, oh, well, can't blame her, really. But then I noticed that she did have a book with her. And so I took a chance and I asked her what she was reading. And it was incredible the way it transformed our interaction, because suddenly she just lit up and she was so excited to tell me about her book.
Oh, isn't that lovely?
And so we had a nice chat and it was really lovely. She, it ended up being a real, I'm so glad you came in today sort of interaction, and all because...
of a book.
Yes. Of being interested in what somebody else was reading. And I think maybe especially because I'm aware that I'm an American in the UK, where certainly the stereotype is of a much more reserved character. So I'm always a little wary of...
You mean we think Americans are?
No, the other way around.
The other way around, absolutely.
Yes, as in I feel like I'm living in a culture that is probably by habit more reserved than the culture that I come from. And so therefore I'm a little bit more wary of actually, initiating such an exchange with a stranger.
As an Irish person, no such inhibitions. Always go straight, any bus stop I'm at, I've got to find some reason for connecting with the people.
And I think I've read numerous articles as well that sort of say that those kinds of interactions contribute much more to our happiness than one might expect, just those interactions with strangers. I feel like I have led us somewhat off the track here, but it was a happy little trail, so I'm all right with that. You were telling me about when you became part of the Listening Book story, and it came through your work in the with the school and the charities that you sought out for the boys to raise money for, to support. Do you remember how long ago was that?
Oh goodness, I think that was a long time ago too. Well, that must have been even before I met Norma, because I only saw Norma when I was already a trustee. So it must be nearly 30 years. Can you believe? Because it was such a fun job. So probably like 25 years ago.
Okay.
I'm very bad at dates.
So what I would love to know is, from your perspective, how has it changed?
It's changed so much, and with so much for the better. Well, for one thing, it's so exciting that audiobooks are so much a bigger part of reading now. I mean, or accessing books, because then they were a bit of a minority thing. And I remember when I first joined the board, it was always a question of, we were thinking that somehow maybe the charity would become redundant, and it's anything but that. And of course, it was so much harder for people to even the listening books then were much more difficult to access, because they were clunky machines, and then if you didn't press the right button, it stopped the book, or it put it in the wrong place. So I think it's so good that it's now become so much easier for people to enjoy the book without having to negotiate all that kind of technology.
Yeah.
And now people can download or stream what they want in it very quickly, so you don't have to wait for the post, because the post was a huge cost for us.
Yes, I can imagine.
It was a big part of our budget. And then, of course, postal services are a bit erratic, so people were let down. So all that has got much better for people. So that's really exciting. And then I love the fact, for example, that we've got the mini libraries going to hospices.
Yes.
So I think we've reached nearly all the hospices in the country, including many children's hospices. And that really reminds one it's so painful for parents to have a child who's in a hospice. But to feel that child, is able to kind of escape into a lovely world that's exciting for them and gives them lots of pleasure. It gives the parents or the carers a bit of a respite as well. But that's always been true. But I think that now people are more independent because the technology has become so much easier. And of course we've grown our membership a lot, in so many different ways. So that's exciting. But I'm always so impatient for us to grow it even more. And we're getting a new website, which is very exciting. And I think that's going to make it even easier for people to reach us and for us to reach them. Because there are still lots and lots of people who don't know that we exist, which makes me sad, because I think they could get so much out of it, out of their membership if they belonged. So it's very much a word of mouth still, I think.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, everybody I tell is usually excited about the possibility.
Yeah. And it really makes a big difference to some people's lives, I think. Especially maybe some of our elder members who are living on their own. And, maybe they see people in the daytime a bit, not enough sometimes, but they can quite often be poor sleepers. So if they wake up in the night, I think a book can be a real solace, real company. Well, actually, Stephen Fry, our patron, says that, what good company. I suppose it's the reader, the narrator is, and then you're connecting with the narrator and connecting with the characters in the book and connecting with the author. So there's a whole sort of company of people that you can be involved with. Yeah,
it reminds me of that old line, that we read to know we're not alone. And I just thought, well, how much truer is that of audiobooks when you feel like you've got another human voice keeping you company.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Kit Duval, reader, author, massive listener of audiobooks, and now I'm happy to tell you, ambassador for listening books. As the author of 2 books, I was really involved in choosing the narrators of my novels because I wanted to make sure that as many people as possible could enjoy what I had written. My son Luke, who has dyslexia, has come to enjoy literature through audiobooks, through listening to them, and he's been able to keep up with his friends, he's been able to enjoy the world of literature. And so being asked to be an ambassador for listening books is my way of giving something back. I was also really pleased to see that Listening Books is now working with the Book Trust to bring literature and audiobooks to children in care. Before I was an author, I used to work in the care system, work with children in the care system, and I know that for many of those children, reading physical books is quite an overwhelming thing. And listening books can help children in the care system, children in foster placements, really enjoy audiobooks.
It makes a big difference. And it can be so irritating, of course, if the narrator is not good. One or two.
We won't name names.
No, we won't. But it's so brilliant when you have good. I'm thinking of Juliet Stevenson reading Middlemarch. Just that wonderful voice.
She's wonderful, isn't
yes,
she?
And
yes.
Mark Haddon said, I think that she could be reading a sort of Lucozade advertisement. It doesn't matter what she's reading. It's going to make a difference. But she just gets it right.
Yes. Is she one that it wouldn't really matter what the book was that you would listen to?
Oh no, it would
No,
matter what the book
it would
was.
matter. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes.
The content's important.
Yes. Yes. Well, tell me about that next. What sorts of books, other than The Hidden Life of Trees and Middlemarch, both of which I have read and enjoyed as well.
Oh, good. Well, that's nice. We share that.
We do indeed.
Yeah.
So tell me more. What sorts of books draw
Well, I'm
you?
reading more and more non-fiction now. So I've got, well, for the summer, I always read books that friends recommend, different friends, because if you spend time reading reviews, you don't have time to read. So I just wait till friends tell me about a book. So I've just finished a book called The Easternmost House, which was fascinating, which was about this woman who lives by her. She lives in this house that's about to fall into the sea on the edge of Norfolk. And it's just a wonderful mixture of philosophy and humour and real knowledge of the locality and global heating, as we now must call it. And as she says, she knows her house. It's a year in the last, I think, 2017 or 2018 maybe, and what happened each month and how the cliff fell away some months and then some months it remained stable. But she knows that within 3 years the house will be gone. It's the house that was in front of her has been demolished already. And as she puts, all of us have a cliff coming towards us, but mine is rather visible. So I really enjoyed that. And that was actually it was my daughter who gave me that. And then, well, for the summer I've got ahead of me Jan Morris's trilogy about the British Empire, because that's 3 volumes that'll keep me going. But I think it's actually when she was James Morris, but it's so well written so far, so I've got into that. And apparently there's a big section about Ireland, which I'm looking forward to reading, about the Irish famine and so on.
Looking forward to that, are we?
Well, I mean, you can't know enough about it, really.
That's true.
And it has it affects your whole sort of way of looking at empire and
absolutely
all that. So I'm looking forward to that. And then what else have I been reading I loved a book called A Seabird's Cry by Adam Nicholson, relatively recently, all about the different seabirds. And just so lyrically written. I mean, very, very beautiful descriptions of the birds and their habits and the sea, but also really made me think, because the gannets are really brutal. And the first thing a gannet does is kill its sibling. The
right.
3-day-old gannet, when its sibling the shell breaks, it just goes over and kills it.
Oh dear.
But then it gets a horrible rush of adrenaline as that experience, and then the rest of the gannet life is pretty brutal too. They seem to be, they're either attacking or defending themselves from attack by each other. But it made me think, for some reason, he talks about the brain chemistry of the gannets and how their brains are changed by this experience of being on the alert all the time, being, if you like, abused all the time. So it made me think about people in prison, and so many of whom have been abused. And I thought, actually, it really made me wonder how responsible they are for what they do, because their brain chemistry has probably been changed by these early experiences of horror, fear and brutality that they've had. So I found it fascinating. But also he describes beautifully the ocean and how it looks to us like just one great sort of blank bit of sea. But to a seabird, especially the ones like the fulmars, I think it was, and the albatrosses, they have these holes in their beaks, so they have very, very strong sense of smell. So they read the ocean by smell, and it becomes a kind of fascinating landscape, I was going to say, but seascape for them. So what looks to us like a blank is actually sending to them lots and lots of messages. But I found that I just was really sad when I finished the book.
You really are on a non-fiction kick.
I am.
Yeah.
I am. Yes. I read, the last fiction book I read was Olive Kitteridge, which I did love.
Oh, I love that book so much.
So did I. I loved it. And then I saw, was it the film? And it wasn't nearly.
Oh, I haven't seen, I didn't know there was a film.
And it's by that wonderful woman who was in, the woman who acts Olive Kitteridge is in, she was the one in the 3 Billboards. She's such a good actress.
Oh.
But the book, I felt, really made me laugh out loud, but also weep. I mean, I thought it was a brilliant book, actually.
It was.
Yeah.
That was one recommended to me by a friend. And it's funny, when a friend recommends a book that is so successful, I don't mean in general terms among the world, but just for you as a book. It is.
Oh, you're really grateful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, also my estimation of their reading recommendations in the future goes way up there.
Yes. I've got a few friends, and whatever they recommend, I'll go for it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. They are real prizes to keep.
Yeah.
And likewise, I find that when someone takes a recommendation from me and actually reads it and loves it, it is the best feeling. I love to be that person who has recommended the right book to the right person.
Yeah, me too. Well, that's a little vanity, isn't it? But,
well,
it is
it's
nice.
just so gratifying. It's just the
that
opportunity to share it. That's the thing. It's the feeling of getting to share something that has been really, a really moving and meaningful experience for yourself, to be able to share that, even if, well, obviously it's not going to be a simultaneous experience and it's going to necessarily be a separate experience, but somehow it is that
it's a real bond.
Yes.
It's a big bond. Yeah. And I've got a couple of friends who always say, I really want, can you recommend something else? Because I loved that last thing. Exactly. And you feel really pleased about that. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. There's a little bit of vanity in it as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hello, I'm Jenny Eclair, and I'm here on behalf of Listening Books. I'm a big reader. I've always been a big reader, and I think that it's really important that everybody has access to story in whatever means that is, whether they're reading themselves, whether somebody's reading to them, or via audio. And I think that technology has done a brilliant thing to help us all who struggle with reading, whether that's physically or mental health issues. My mother's just had a cataract op that is taking a long time for her to get over. I myself have dry eye, which is a very boring disease and means that sometimes my eyes get very tired, very dry, and I read a lot via audio. I still count it as reading. I think it is reading. You're getting your stories, and as long as you're getting your stories, that is the main thing. So I'm very glad that I've been asked to sort of promote this charity, the Listening Books in Charity.
Because I've got grandsons now and a granddaughter, but she's a bit small for many books yet. But I do think I really like what Cressida Cowell, who's the new children's laureate, she said the other day that, I think it was she who said it, that, it was Catherine Rundle who said, that a good children's book is actually not just for children, that adults can enjoy it. And I was listening again to Winnie the Pooh read by Alan Bennett, and I was thinking actually adults get more out of this than most children. I mean, it's just so subtle and funny, and the timing is so good, and it's almost better on audio, I think. Yeah, because he's such a great reader. Yeah. And he obviously loves Winnie the Pooh too. And I used to spend my childhood as an only child on my own, drawing all those drawings, from the book.
That reminds me of the sort of opposite of that wonderful feeling you get when you've recommended a good book to someone who really appreciates that book. And that is, I think this particularly happens with children's books. If you particularly loved a book growing up and want to give that experience to the children that you know in your life, and it doesn't always translate. It just either for personality reasons or just for the times.
It's not always the right moment.
It isn't always the right moment, either in their life or it may just not be contemporary enough for them anymore. I don't know. But I did have that experience trying to share the experience that I had with Anne of Green Gables and that whole series, and trying to share that with a niece, and it just didn't work for her. Yeah.
But what about the Laura Ingalls Wilder's Wilder books.
I think she
love
liked those better.
The Big
Yeah.
House, A Little House in the Big Woods. Oh, I think that they're so beautifully written, those books. And actually, have you read Frances Bufford's book about the child that books built? That's a nice book.
No, but I like Frances Bufford a lot.
I didn't like Golden Hill very much, actually.
Oh, did you not?
I shouldn't know.
Oh, no, I really enjoyed that, actually.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
But
yeah.
I loved The Child That Books Built, which was about his experience, because he had a sister who was very seriously ill, and his parents had to be with her a lot in Great Ormond Street, and they lived in the Midlands, I think. So he was left a great deal to his own devices, and he spent a lot of time reading. But he said that those Laura Ingalls Wilder's books were just they were the thing that really got him into the adult world. Things like The Long Winter, and he went and did a whole sort of pilgrimage around all the places that she'd come from and her pioneering journey. So it's very touching. But I think they are beautiful books, those.
To be honest, I'm not sure that I ever read them. I remember watching the television series.
The style is beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah. So I recommend those.
Maybe I should return to those as an adult.
They appeal to a lot of people, I think.
Absolutely. Well, I've got one last question for you, Gillie. We've talked a little about the past 60 years of listening books, from the time it was founded in 1959 to the present day. I'd love to know what you hope for its future.
I suppose my hope for the future is that just more people will know about us, and that publishers, we owe a lot to the publishers who give us so many, generous concessions on being able to record or give recordings of their books. So I hope we maintain our good relationships with the publishers, and that more and more people will be able to enjoy what we have to offer. So just reaching more people and publicising what we do.
Thank you so much for being here, Gillie. It's been a real pleasure.
Well, it's really nice to meet you for the first time.
And as I promised, here's that chat with Nik de Garis, whom you've probably heard on the podcast in previous episodes. But even when you didn't hear his voice, you were often hearing the results of his producing.
All right, Nik, we are in the final hours of your last day here at Listening Books. You've been the audio producer here for how long?
Just shy of 2 years, a month shy of 2 years.
Very good. And you've produced quite a few audiobooks in that time.
I've tried to.
Any standouts for you?
Well, the second book I did, I had a quick trial run with a very short book I did that was all about kind of grief and stuff.
Was your trial?
That was not for the job. But I mean that was like your first. That was the first book I made. Yeah. So my very first reading.
I've heard about that one. It was a really good one.
Yeah, it seemed to work out well. It was all downhill since there. So I did this book about kind of grief and stuff. The Day the Sea Went Away and Never Came Back. That was good, but it was only like a 10-minute long book. Those are my favourite. Yeah. But the first proper book I did, Michael Rosen came in and Anne-Marie Young, and I was freaking out. I think it was about 3 weeks after I started, they were due to come in, and it had already been arranged before I started the job, and all this kind of stuff. And I was terrified because I was trying to frantically work out how the studio worked, how to make sure to do it all. I was trying to plan how to record it because they were both coming in. And it's like a non-fiction book talking about refugees and immigrants and what the differences are and things like that. And yeah, and I was in awe at Michael Rosen coming in because he's this big children's author and all this kind of stuff. And Anne-Marie Young as well, actually, is amazing. Like, I didn't realise at first who she was, but she had a big influence on how most children learn to read nowadays, which is massive. So those guys coming in was a big deal, particularly for me. And it was the first time recording an audiobook, and it was very much thrown in the deep end. And it all went great until finished the recording. We did like an interview with them afterwards as well. It was all great. They went off. Next couple of days, I finished editing the book, and I was going through the book with it to check it. turns out I missed an entire page.
No.
Yeah. Entire page. And there was no way to get round it. I had to very sheepishly ask Michael Rosen to come back in to record one page, which took less than 5 minutes in the studio.
Yeah.
That was it. He was here for a total of half an hour.
Did he have far to come for that?
He was coming from North London and heading off to somewhere else in North London. So we had to sort out taxis for him to go there and back and what have you.
Okay. But, I mean, he wasn't having to like fly in or...
No. I think if you had to fly in, it might have been different, but I felt so bad.
That would be embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's totally understandable, but...
And everyone has a mistake in them, I suppose.
Yeah.
So, and that was...
I mean, I nearly forgot to press record just a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
Nearly being the operative word there.
Yes, that was particularly embarrassing. But that book still really sticks out in that I achieved that despite everything going on. Some other books that really stick out. Fantastically Great Women Who Changed the World. I go on about it all the time.
Yeah.
I worked with my friend Emmy Rose on it, and I just had so much fun doing it and producing it and putting lots of sounds and stuff in it.
Fantastically Great Women Who Changed the World.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah. Anybody that you hadn't heard of?
Gertrude Edley.
Ooh, what's she
do? The first woman to swim the Channel. And there's another record in there with it as well. She beat the time by like a good long amount. And she did it in a swimming costume rather than naked like the men did. She just ate bananas to keep it... sweets, to keep it going, even though everyone told her it wouldn't work. She had her favourite song playing on a loop on a record on the boat with her. Or the boat beside her to keep her going. Yeah. It's a song called We Have No Bananas Today. Incredible story. And I'd never heard of her at all. But she was fun. Her in particular really sticks out. And I particularly enjoyed making that chapter.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. So you're going on to work for the BBC in Guernsey?
Yep.
Is that right?
Local BBC Guernsey.
Yeah, excellent. I know... you have lots to look forward to there. What's the thing you're going to miss leaving behind listening books and London town, I suppose?
Apart from the amazing kind of group of people who work at listening books, who I'm really going to miss, I'm going to miss working on audiobooks, which I didn't think I would be saying 2 years ago. Really? Yeah. When I applied for the job, I was looking for anything in audio and I was being open-minded. I was like, okay, audiobooks, that could be interesting. I've got lots of great ideas for it. It's a job where I'm the only producer, so there's a lot of responsibility and creativity involved. Yeah. And the job's changed massively, like, over the time that I've done it. But it wasn't what I expected to fall into. And now that I'm leaving it to go into radio, which was maybe what I was looking at doing originally, I'm really going to miss doing audiobooks. I'm like, maybe I should be doing audiobooks rather than radio. I don't know. Yes, I'm really going to miss working on the really kind of fun projects that are very unique to this job. It's the only place where I'll do a crime thriller set in Birmingham one week, do bedtime stories for Shakespeare another week, do a play all about Rudyard Kipling, to producing a podcast episode, to heading all the way down to down to Hastings or somewhere like that to interview an author. I've really done a lot of stuff in 2 years, and it surprises me. I keep looking back and going, oh yeah, I did that, and I met that author, and it's just incredible. Like, I got the chance to meet Stephen Fry, which is just the biggest deal. Yeah. Really special, which I never expected. And he was really lovely. Yeah. And
I hear that you comported yourself in an unembarrassing way as well. Like, unlike many of us who would go silly.
Well, apparently. But I just didn't know what to say to him. It's like you meet someone super famous and they're there to do a job, which is fine. He was there. We did our kind of ask the author stuff with him.
Yeah.
Which was really wonderful. His answers were amazing.
Oh, didn't you have him actually? Didn't you actually dare to ask him to do a line over?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I did.
The cheek.
So he recorded just like a little thing for our newsletter. So this is Connect. I'm Stephen Fry, and I asked him just to do it once more because I thought it popped to my ears. He didn't say anything, but that's the only thing I could say to him. I wanted to ask him a million questions.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't know where to start. And you don't want to be that person who goes, oh my God, I love you in this. And, I've been watching all the Blackadder episodes and I think you're amazing.
Yeah. I am that person though.
Well, we all know that.
No, I'm not actually. I'm the person who can't even get all of that out because I'm too choked up to even say anything.
Completely. Yeah. I just try and remain professional and just not say anything awkward or whatever, you know.
Yeah. That's my next like professional development is learning how to keep my cool. Nick, you know you're going to be so missed around here.
I'm really going to miss it too. I'm really going to miss it.
And we do miss you, Nick. Hope Guernsey is treating you well. That's it for this episode, and indeed the current series. Thanks to all who've taken part, and thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this series, or if you'd like to recommend a topic for the next one, do give us a shout on Twitter or Instagram @ListeningBooks, or on Facebook @ListeningBooks12. And do make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that when Series 3 appears, you'll be the first to know. Voluminous is produced by Listening Books, a UK charity providing audiobooks for people with an illness, physical or learning disability, or mental health condition which affects their ability to read, print, or hold a book. If that's you or someone you know, you can find out how to access our more than 8,000 titles, plus 60 more just added especially as a birthday treat, by heading to listening-books.org.uk.